the State of the Nation address this evening. Some have raised concerns about high crime levels and unemployment. President Ramaphosa is set to address the nation at the Cape Town City Hall this evening. Residents have also called for more police deployment on the Cape Flats.
There must be more police people around our areas, Mr. President. Please come out here to our communities, support us, be there for us. Don't address something and don't get working on.
The problem is that the extortion that is continuously happening, and it's still happening till today, it's not like SAPS or all these other institutions don't know about these things. I mean, as you did say that I also was a victim to this, where I was actually told to close down a car wash.
Young people are not working, they're all in drugs, and it will be easy if the government can try to about the work.
Postbank has urged all SASSA grant beneficiaries who have not upgraded to the Postbank Black Card to urgently do so. Social grant beneficiaries who use the SASSA Gold cards have until the 28th of this month to switch to the Postbank Black Card as gold cards are being phased out. SASSA says the Black Card is equipped with biometric authentication and enhanced encryption for better protection against fraud while ensuring faster and more reliable access to grant money. Postbank CEO Nikki Mbengashe.
So people do need to change their cards because, as with any card, cards do expire at some point, right? The 28th of February is here, and that card, the yellow card, will stop working, and therefore people have to come through. Because for the safety of the people and for compliance, people do have to have their new card. I think it's convenient for them. It gives them access to their funds quite easily. They don't have to queue. They can swipe at any retailer. They can swipe at retailer and actually get their cash if they want the cash. So it's actually better for them to actually get the black card.
A former senior official at the World Trade Organization says China's formal complaint over U.S. additional tariffs has very little chance of yielding positive results. Beijing has denied the Trump administration's claim that illegal drug shipments from China justify the imposition of tariffs. The BBC's Stephen MacDonald reports.
It is likely to be a sort of symbolic act because the appellate body has been frozen because the US blocked judges being appointed to that body. Now, without enough judges, they can't sit and they can't enforce the rules. Even if they had enough judges, this would likely take years. And so what is probably going to happen is before some sort of decision is made at the WTO, we're likely to see some talks between China and the US.
Recapping the top story, the private prosecution matter against President Cyril Ramaphosa by former President Jacob Zuma has been removed from the roll in the High Court in Johannesburg. I am Mondela Mbora for SAFM News, headlines at 1:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
Don't miss out. Make every day a payday with the guaranteed 1 million rand daily lotto jackpot that's waiting to be won. From just 3 rand, play Daily Lotto now for your chance at the guaranteed 1 million rand jackpot. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old and play responsibly. E2 is a proud operator of the National Lottery.
Reigning champions and rock leaders Masandawana have a massive task to deliver maximum points to Korkop. But the Buccaneers are eyeing the top spot. They want to paint the capital city in black and white. Miguel Cardoso is up against Jose Rivero. Kala. This is the Betway Premiership. Witness Mzanti's beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus Orlando Pirates FC. This Saturday, 8 February at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
President Cyril Ramaphosa will on Thursday, 6th of February, deliver the 2025 State of the Nation Address at the Cape Town City Hall. Tune in to the meeting point with Koketso Sachane with a special broadcast from 6 p.m. bringing you blow-by-blow coverage at the 2025 State of the Nation Address. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Ever stood in front of the fridge hoping for a quick lunch decision only to find nothing? So you just order what you had yesterday. Well, getting your car covered online with Santam is faster than deciding what you have for lunch. It only takes 2 minutes, and to switch, all you have to do is visit santam.co.za. That's Santam. This is freedom.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Akangowalapa babesitshondo semncini betufike nonina phemzini aya akangowalapa bejalana bengalazi cebo abanye bengibamba ngingavumi emphakathini bedlala ngicela ukulungisa elanxeba lakudala
Thandiswa Mazwai coming through with the brand new single Gulungile, and this was released late last year as an introduction to her latest body of work. Sankofa is the name of the album, and it derives from an African word from the Akan tribe of Ghana, and its literal translation is that it is not taboo to fetch what is at risk of being left behind. And this project, Sankofa, came, of course, on the back of her celebrating the 20th anniversary of her seminal body of work in her debut album Zabalaza, Gulungile being the very first single from that, and translating to It Is Well. It's a song about healing the childhood wounds that we carry with us into adulthood. We had a wonderful conversation with her about 2 weeks ago, if memory serves correct, in which we unpacked not just the body of Sankofa, but also the legacy of Thandiswa Mazwai and the work that she's put out there and the impact that it's had on audiences across South African borders. You can always double back to that podcast via safm.co.za, and it will be there underneath the full circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. How are you doing this afternoon? I hope you are having a great day. It's a beautiful day countrywide. Lots of activities happening today. Lots happening in our courtrooms, and of course everybody keeping a keen eye with those events and festivities that are going to be held later on in Cape Town. With that, the official opening of the 7th Parliament. The President is going to be delivering, of course, today the annual State of the Nation address, and that's expected to take place at 8 p.m., giving us just enough time to get through our dinners and then settle in and listen to that very important family meeting. And of course, Koketso, our very own Koketso, is going to be broadcasting from Cape Town this evening from 8 until 10 p.m. You can catch him there with the meeting point. For us, though, today, yes, we're going to dabble a little bit on perhaps what is to be expected. The conversation throughout the station this day has been obviously unpacking the various issues and the expectations from that SONA, and we as well on the Full Circle are going to dip in to perhaps something that weighs heavy on some folks, and that is the conversation around alcohol and alcohol abuse in the country. You remember when he said, "Guti, we must tuma him, tuma mina." He literally said there that we must send him as well to go deal with the alcohol abuse. We must send him to go deal with the drug abuse. We must send him to go and deal with the addicts and the dealers and the families that have been torn apart, and it's a pressing societal issue, and so we're going to dip into it today as well on the show. Also coming up, we are going to be getting a better understanding of the draft code of good practice on dismissal to regulate labor relations. We're going to be catching up with the folks at Strategy Labor Solutions around this, and they're going to unpack these latest developments for us. And we also are going to be touching base with Johanna LeBlanc a little bit later on in the show, and we're looking at the second Trump presidency. From oath to action, it's been an eventful 2 weeks. And so we're going to try and understand that from just a common man on the street perspective, because there's obviously a lot of analysis, a lot of, opinion flying around. And so we're going to try and simplify it for you and I so that we can better understand the context of what is happening and, of course, the implications of everything that has sort of unveiled in the last 2 weeks. Also today, I'm very excited to be catching up with Siyabonga Fani, who's one of South Africa's most respected terracotta sculptural masters. Yes, he's a master. And he's going to be showcasing on the fringe of the Investec Art Fair. That is the biggest art fair on the continent, and it opens up the artistic calendar for 2025. And so we're going to be catching up with him a little bit later on the show. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line, and 086-000-2032 is the number that you can call us on.
The National School Nutrition Program and social grants are instrumental in ensuring that children's needs for food and other essential services are met. We need a minimum health promotion levy of 20% on all sugary drinks to support social protection initiatives. Find out more on the next episode of Chew on This at healer.org. on 30 January from 3 p.m.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, clientele legal plans are affordable and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Okay, we are catching up with Nombuso Ndlovu now, who's an industrial relations consultant at Strategy Labor Solutions. And there's a draft code of good practice on dismissal that is out there for your commentary, and it's set to provide guidance to employers and employees, as well as trade unions and any other persons applying it under the Labor Relations Act. And it is out there. It's published now for your participation and input, and so we're going to try and get a better understanding as to what this all means, and of course, how does this new draft compare to the current existing labor laws? How are you doing this afternoon, Nombuso?
I'm very well, thank you, Bridget.
Thank you so much for the time. Much appreciated. Maybe let's start by, if you could perhaps explain to us the purpose of the draft code of good practice on dismissal, and how much does it vary or differ from existing labor laws?
Okay. So I think that the purpose of the guidelines in terms of the
So can we just pause you there for a second, please? And we're going to switch you quickly to WhatsApp. The line is static and breaking on us, so we're going to try and switch her to WhatsApp in just a moment. Our WhatsApp line is open on 061-410-4107 if you want to share on the conversations today, and 086-000-2032 is the number that you can call us on. So much on the agenda today, and of course we're going to be starting the conversation here by unpacking what is this new draft code of good practice on dismissal, and how does it impact perhaps dismissal and disciplinary processes in your workplace for both yourself as well as your employer, and is there a vast difference between what's now being tabled for participation and input versus what is currently being used in the labor sector? So we're going to have that conversation in just a moment, as soon as we manage to switch those lines with Nombuso. And of course, our lines are open in general for you throughout the course of the day if there's anything else that you want to table by way of discussion. And I know a lot of people really right now are preoccupied with the agenda for SONA today, and conversations centering around education, conversations centering around social grants, as well as the GNU assessing the first couple of months of the GNU being in practice and whether or not they've delivered on some of the things that they've promised. Could be early days for that, but yes, I'm told Nombuso is back on the line, and let's try it again, Nombuso. We were starting with perhaps trying to understand the purpose of the draft code of good practice on dismissal, and how and if whether or not it differs drastically from existing labor laws.
Well, as you've explained, what the purpose of the actual code is to provide guidance to employers, employees, trade unions, etc. What the new code seeks to do is to alleviate the technicalities and simplify some of the existing requirements relating to a fair dismissal, especially in relation to small businesses, where, for example, it is said that small businesses need not or cannot be reasonably expected to engage in time-consuming and possibly money-consuming investigations and pre-dismissal processes, while at the same breath running a business. So it seeks to alleviate the technicalities, simplify the process, but also maintaining the fairness and the legal obligations from the parties, the employers.
Okay, so small businesses, as you say, often struggle with compliance due to their limited resources. Let's expand a little bit, perhaps just in practice, as to how precisely the code will cater for their unique challenges. You talk about simplifying the processes for them.
So what the code recommends, that what should be borne in mind with small businesses or small employers, is that, as you state, they do not always have the human resource capacity or the departments to deal with these types of technicalities, and they don't always have the people who are very skilled in dealing with that. So it's then implored upon the small businesses, or recommended for small businesses, to adopt a less formal or a less technically formal procedure, but maintaining the fairness. What the challenge with the code or new code, and this is why it is implored upon the public to take participation, is that it doesn't specify what can or cannot be done by small businesses, or what can be alleviated and not be followed. What it simply states is that it should be as less technical or as simplified as possible, while maintaining fairness and while maintaining the obligation of the Labour Relations Act requirements by the employer in ensuring a fair process in terms of dismissal.
Yeah. Doesn't that leave gap, though, perhaps for wide interpretation if there's no specification of what can and cannot be done by small business?
And that is why it is implored upon the public to take part, to make their submissions. We have been provided with 60 days to do so. So as the public, the purpose of this is for the Department of Employment and Labour to review what can be done, what can be considered to be reasonably accommodated for a smaller employer, making sure that he or she is still being fair, still following the guidelines of the Labour Relations Act, the legal obligations of that, while minimizing time-consuming processes or time-consuming investigations or time-consuming or possibly even cost-consuming processes or the application of that. So that is the slight shortcoming, if I may, of the new code, in that it doesn't specifically outline what can be done, but what it provides is that small businesses should be able to, or should rather, adopt less formal processes and as quickly or as fairly as possible effect those dismissals.
Then I wonder, Nombuso, but wouldn't it have been proactive for the department to consult the various stakeholders in the labor sector and already come up with some kind of draft plan, versus just leaving it open and hoping that, in the 60 days, it will correlate the data that will inform the specification of these steps? Surely, as a department, they have some kind of understanding as what would streamline the processes, but while still keeping them fair, while still keeping them just and beneficial for both employer and employee in a small business setting.
You make a fair point, but what also needs to be taken into consideration is that the code also states that the circumstances of the small business need to be taken into consideration. So it would be very difficult for the Department of Employment and Labour to possibly engage each and every, or small stakeholders or small businesses, to say, what are your needs, what are your needs, what are your needs. So what the code provides is that also, in addition to simplifying and adopting less formal processes, the business or the small business needs, or the circumstances of the small business, need to be taken into consideration.
Okay. And then, by way of misconduct and incapacity, there we go, related dismissals. I swear English these days has just been deving me, as the young kids say. What steps are sort of spoken to now in this new draft code of conduct?
Right. The most important step, or the most important determination of a fair process, is that a dismissal is only fair if it is one for a fair reason and in accordance to a fair process. Now, a fair process is considered to be fair if it applies the principle, what is known as the Latin term of audi alteram partem. That principle basically means that allowing the other party to be heard. What this means is that following an investigation, if you've determined that an employee has misconducted themselves, or if you've determined that the employee does not have the capacity to continue working or continue performing their duties, that employee must be, in terms of a fair procedure, they must be issued or served with a notice to attend the inquiry or the disciplinary hearing, adequately so. And the guideline therein is a minimum of 2 working days. That employee must be given an opportunity to prepare a defense or a response to that allegation or to that charge.
Okay.
And again, the guideline also is a minimum of 48 hours or minimum of 2 working days.
Yeah.
In terms of that procedure, still the employee has the right to be represented either by a fellow employee, or in the event that an employer has a written or a recognition agreement with a trade union, apply the rules, apply the steps and such, meaning that an employee can be represented either by an internal employee or a representative or an elected shop steward in that disciplinary hearing. And that employee also has a right to then also testify in their own language. That is in the respect of a fair procedure.
I see. And finally, just the 60 days of participation. So the public has 60 days to submit their comments on this draft.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do, as indicated therein. And the purpose of this is because this code does affect the public. That is why it is implored upon for the public to participate, because to ensure that, one, employers who may potentially want to embark upon a dismissal process or a disciplinary process on an employee, they are doing so following the legal guidelines and the legal obligations as stipulated in the Labor Relations Act. And for the employee who may potentially want to challenge the fairness or even challenge the actual dismissal itself, they also need to be aware of the guidelines set out in the code and must be able to know what is expected or what is required of them to challenge that and how for them to challenge that.
Awesome. Nombuso Ndlovu, thank you so much for the time. Nombuso is the Industrial Relations Consultant at Strategy Labour Solutions. It's just gone 1:30. Yes, I've been having my own Mayor Penny Majodina moments this week, but it happens to the very best of us. 1:30 time for Ondela and the headline news.
Thank you, Bridget. In the news headlines, steel producer ArcelorMittal says its closure has been delayed by a month amid ongoing interventions with government. A multidisciplinary team of government departments was established last month to find a solution to the looming job losses. The South African Medical Association Trade Union in Mpumalanga says it expects President Cyril Ramaphosa to outline how a shortage of health workers will be addressed in his State of the Nation address tonight. And the private prosecution matter against President Cyril Ramaphosa by former President Jacob Zuma has been removed from the roll in the High Court in Johannesburg. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
President Cyril Ramaphosa will on Thursday, 6th of February, deliver the 2025 State of the Nation Address at the Cape Town City Hall. Tune in to the meeting point with Koketso Sachane with a special broadcast from 6 p.m., bringing you blow-by-blow coverage at the 2025 State of the Nation Address.
SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Alrighty, so today is the big day. It is the first SONA for President Cyril Ramaphosa under the GNU. So lots of expectations and obviously lots of conversations centered around that. And we thought we'd follow through on some conversation that we began earlier on this year, just focusing on alcohol policies in the country and perhaps the SONA expectations around that, whether or not any alcohol policy reform needs the president's attention. And we are catching up with Khalifa Answer, who is the campaign manager at Alcohol Harms Reduction Campaign at the DG Murray Trust. How are you doing this afternoon, Khalifa?
Hi, it's Kashifa. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Sorry,
Bridget?
it's?
Kashifa.
Kashifa. Okay. Thank you for that. All spellings were wrong everywhere. Kashifa. Thank you so much. Thank you for the time as well, Kashifa. Much appreciated. This is an ongoing conversation in the country right now, right? Because as the president prepares for the address with the nation, we know that we grapple with the devastating effects socially and economically as well of alcohol harm and alcohol abuse in the country.
Yes, So, I mean, South Africa has been struggling for a really long time. We are a country of heavy drinkers, and the harm is far, far reaching, costing our public health system, violence increases, preventable deaths on our roads also increase as a result of excessive alcohol use. And we really feel that it is the time for government to start making a commitment to real action with regards to reducing alcohol harm in South Africa.
And when it comes to sort of, the government taking real action, what would that entail? I spoke about when the president made his version of a SONA speech a few years ago, citing the lyrics of Hugh Masigela's famous song, Tumamina. He did, in the lyrics, explicitly mention that Tumamina to go and deal with the drug abuse in the country, Tumamina to go and deal with the addicts and the abusers. And so he was very deliberate on mentioning that. But, how deliberate and focused has he been in terms of interventions throughout the years of his presidency?
Well, the Liquor Amendment Bill was drafted in 2016, came out for public comment, and since then there has been no movement. So in terms of deliberateness of getting legislature passed, unfortunately, we haven't seen any action in that regard. So since 2016, waiting for legislature to come out, so if we're saying Tumamina, we're saying President Cyril Ramaphosa passed this legislature so that we can start seeing a difference in our communities with regards to alcohol harm. Unfortunately, South Africa has heavily relied on messaging around drinking safely, safe drinking practices, etc. And unfortunately, that just hasn't been enough. We're going to need government to take the lead on this and say we're putting our foot down, we're going to get this bill passed, and we're going to start making the changes we want to see with regards to excessive alcohol use and other substances.
In January, we had a conversation at the beginning of the year with a health economist on alcohol taxation. And part of the gist of the conversation was really that apart from the messaging, apart from the social interventions and the campaigns, South Africa needs to be very, very deliberate in sort of higher taxes when it comes to the alcohol industry, and that the data speaks to that. In countries where these interventions have been implemented, there's been a real significant change in alcohol consumption and abusive behaviors of alcohol and drugs to a larger extent. Are these kinds of interventions what the president should be drilling down on and realistically finding his pen and finally putting pen to paper?
Absolutely. We have seen, as you said, the research is very clear to say that interventions like pricing mechanisms like excise taxes, minimum unit pricing, has shown to significantly reduce alcohol harm. Part of the challenge that we have in South Africa is that alcohol is very, very cheap in comparison to international standards. So prices increasing will significantly reduce consumption and therefore significantly reduce the harm. So yes, these interventions like pricing interventions coupled with other interventions like restrictions on trade, including trading hours, the density of liquor stores in our communities, all of these interventions combined will really make a big difference. Research has shown that the Liquor Amendment Bill, implemented in the way it stands now, will reduce consumption of alcohol in our country by 7%, which seems like a small number, but 7%, coming back into GDP, the loss for our economy, it's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So what urgent policy changes would you like to see spoken to tonight at tonight's SONA, if any at all? Obviously, a lot of vested interest groups are going to be listening with a keen eye and a keen ear.
Yes, so as I said, we need a final commitment to concrete action. We need the president to really, really commit to saying that alcohol harm is a public health crisis, alcohol harm is a social crisis in South Africa, and that this government of national unity is finally going to take a stand and say that they're going to make a difference with it. The World Health Organization has penned 5 best buys, which are 5 recommendations that governments around the world have implemented to reduce alcohol harm, and it is time that South Africa makes those same commitments and starts saving our communities from the harms that's been caused.
Just by way of wrapping up our conversation, the liquor industry or the alcohol industry, whenever they're engaged in these conversations around social responsibility from their perspective, seem to put forward the argument that they do enough. And what they do is more than ample, whether it's social awareness, whether it's, plugging into NGOs. But their stance always sounds as though what they do is sufficient. But realistically, though, is there a bigger responsibility from them as one of the biggest beneficiaries of consumer behavior when it comes to alcohol to do a bit more, even if that means it's hitting their bottom line at some point?
Absolutely. We cannot continue to consider industry profits over the health of a nation. The industry needs to take responsibility for the harm that their product causes, and absolutely can do more to alleviate the effects. Communities are left to bear the burden. And yes, industry may be contributing to non-profit organizations, etc., but it is really, really not enough to undo some of the damage that's been caused by alcohol harm, unfortunately. So yes, bigger commitment from industry as well. Bigger responsibility needs to be taken from industry, especially with regards to the damage that's been done in our communities.
Yeah. Kashifa, Answer, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it indeed. Kashifa is the campaign manager of Alcohol Harms Reduction, which is a campaign at the DG Murray Trust. And hopefully the president will speak with more clarity and perhaps finite detail around some alcohol policy reforms in the country. It's just gone 2 o'clock on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. We're going to take a quick pause and then we come back and we shift gears just a little bit on a slightly lighter note as we tap into the creative mind of Siyabonga Fani. He's one of South Africa's most respected sculptural masters.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
President Cyril Ramaphosa will on Thursday, 6th of February, deliver the 2025 State of the Nation Address at the Cape Town City Hall. Tune in to the meeting point with Koketso Sachane with a special broadcast from 6 p.m. bringing you blow-by-blow coverage at the 2025 State of the Nation Address.
SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Stages, pages, screens, and more on the Full Circle.
Alrighty, we are catching up now with one of South Africa's terracotta sculptural masters, chatting to ceramist Siyabonga Fani about his work and, of course, the debut solo exhibition at Art Forms that forms part of the fringe itinerary leading up to the Investec Art Fair that is taking place in Cape Town, opening up the artistic calendar for 2025. How are you doing this afternoon, Siyabonga?
I'm good, Bridget, and yourself?
I'm fantastic. Listen, thank you so much for taking the time. I think a lot of folks who are art appreciators and specifically those who appreciate ceramics are very familiar with the name Siyabonga Fani. They are familiar with the family because it's somewhat a family business. And so I'm sure they're quite excited for this solo exhibition that is coming up in Cape Town.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, so yeah, I'm so excited.
It has indeed. I mean, let's talk about a little bit, firstly, about your career, because you started working with clay back in the early 1990s and ultimately founded your studio, Siyabonga Ceramic, in 2013. What is the appeal with clay for you?
For me, it's been a long journey, to be honest to you. So it started like when I was young. So I come from a family where we are the artists, everyone, we take it from my father as well. So I started there. So I went to design at the Sevilla College, which is here in Koguletu as well, whereby I wanted to do graphic design, but apparently I have to come to a place where we need to go to be a manhood and stuff. And then I found a job in ceramic studio, which was in Cork Bay. And then I think my love for ceramic started there. So I worked there for quite some years, and then I started to see the business side of things, and then I went to study business management and stuff. So for quite some time, it's been sort of like taken to the business side of things, but then at the long run, it's sort of like shift, whereby I had to find myself and find my own signature. So this whole exhibition is a representation of all that journey that I've been through, whereby through self-find and all those things, and the journey that I took, whereby I need to find my own signature. So that's what people should expect for this exhibition and all, yeah.
Yeah, and in part, a lot of your work has also been like a requiem for your father, who, in his own right, was an artist. And I wonder, how has that, sort of inspired you as you've navigated the world of art, but more specifically inspired you as a ceramist?
Honestly, for me, I'll pick up to my mother, because now with her, since my father passed away, and then she always knew that we took art from my father. So she was the one who sort of like, she never gave up on us, and then the support and all that, whereby we live in a place where you need to be a doctor or a teacher or something. So with her, she always knew that we took it from our father, and that's the way to go. And then we've been doing it for like some years and stuff, and then through hardship and stuff. But now things are starting to, when you say like life begins at 40, then I can tell you that, that's when I met Olivia from the art forms, and then everything started to change, to be honest to you. So I think I'm on your roll now, and I'm so happy space, and then, so I'm so happy now, and I think I found my true calling as well, so, which is...
I chuckle, Siyabonga, when you say you think you're on a roll now because life begins at 40s. But honestly speaking, I saw, you were part of the Latitudes exhibition last year with art forms, and your ceramics just caught my breath, because they are so impeccably beautiful, stunning, feminine, but with that sort of masculine energy to them. And I remember saying to a friend of mine who's an art buyer, a private art buyer, going, even if I won the jackpot, I would not buy one of these pieces because I'd be scared that someone would bump them.
It's always the case,
And let's talk about that, because your work is absolutely incredible. It's visually beautiful, but it does sort of sit in the duality that it brings like a heavy masculine energy to it, but at the same time, it's got very soft, gentle, sort of a feminine edge to it as well. It's a very interesting, sort of very interesting visual representation of two genders sort of playing together wonderfully.
Honestly, for me, that's what I always tell people with my work. I don't really like have sketches or really plan, but I always have this idea that I want it to be big or smaller. But honestly, with you, like most of my work, it's just me, my God, and my ancestors, just in the clay. Is that combination of all those things coming together? Because for me, to do my work, I just go with it, and then what my heart tells me to go, and I just come up with these things, and then with these beautiful pieces. So obviously sometimes I even surprise myself that I could come up with these art pieces. And then even now, I did the bigger ones, and then the bigger ones, I never thought I could go that far, but it just happens, and things just flows, and I just can't help myself. Yeah, so it happens that way. So for me, I don't really like have sort of like a formula or whatever. It's just me, the clay. We create magic. I just sit with my clay, and then we go to where it takes me. Yeah.
You know what I love about that, because I think whether you're talking to Zizi, Paul, or whether you're talking to Andile, the three of you have that in common, and I think the three of you right now are a representation of the biggest names in African ceramics at the moment. And the three of you, you just said exactly what they always say. I just come to the clay, and then whatever becomes of it becomes of it. But you make it sound simple, but it also sounds like it's a very spiritual process.
Yeah, because you need to really find yourself, to be honest to you, whereby you're in a space where you don't really copy people, you don't see whatever is outside the world. It's just you need your vision and all that. So you don't need anything that's going to distract you, whereby it's sort of like the things sort of like go the other way. But it needs to be you, and you need to find yourself and your calling and why you're doing this and all those things. So it's not easy journey, but it seems easy, but it's not. So you need to really find yourself and all that.
Do you think like the art form of ceramic right now has really cemented its space in African art and in the international art market? Because there are some really big names coming out, particularly out of this country.
I think for some time we are boxed to where it's called craft. So thanks to the other guys that did the big things before me, and honestly, Olivia, she with the book that she did, which is clay forms, she's sort of like explained to people, and then the writings and all those things. So people start to understand how deep the connection it is with us and the clay, and the combination of the art and the gift and all those things. So I think for now, people starting to understand, like, to get into ceramics and stuff. So I think she did a great work, honestly, to be honest to you.
As we do wrap it up, the importance of the role that art forms plays in promoting African sculpture. For anybody who's a collector of coffee table books, that book Clay Forms is a wonderful book, a great history of clay art form, and visually also wonderful. But what has been the role of spaces like art forms in promoting this particular discipline?
I remember talking to Olivia, I think 4 years ago, when she came to for the book. But honest to you, for me, she played, I'll say personally about me, because at the time I didn't have someone to represent my work, and so she's the one that's representing my work out there, and then she's been doing great. I'm telling you, even last year, the art fair, I did great, and then the latitude, so everything has been happening like quickly, and she understands the depth and the suffering of people like doing clay, that you don't have kilns and then it's space. So with her, I think she's trying to close that gap, to be honest to you. So for me, on my side, honestly, she did a great job, and I'm so happy, and I'm still looking forward to the future with her.
Wonderful.
So far, so good, and I'm so happy with the art forms.
Well, listen, it's such a pleasure being in conversation with you and meeting you via the phone. Siyabonga Fani, a name to be remembered in the South African clay discipline. He's showcasing a solo exhibition coming up at Art Forms. It forms part of the greater fringe for the art fair that is happening in Cape Town. So if you want to go see his bodies of work in person, please do yourself that favor. But trust, even if the budget allows, you will want to build it a little box so that nobody knocks it over. That's how beautiful it actually is. Let's take a quick pause.
Action is getting tougher in the second half of the league. The Folks want to ease off pressure with a win, but the Eagles aim to fly with 3 points to remain in the top 5. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Catch Borussia Mönchengladbach FC versus Eintracht Frankfurt FC on Saturday, 8 February at 7:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the
miss out. Make every day a payday with the guaranteed 1 million rand daily lotto jackpot that's waiting to be won. From just 3 rand, play Daily Lotto now for your chance at the guaranteed 1 million rand jackpot. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old to play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends, you need a weekend playlist. It's that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAFM.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Choosing something to watch shouldn't feel like a full-time job. Scrolling, second-guessing, and landing on the same comfort show just to dodge the "you started watching it without me" chat. Here's something that's actually faster than choosing a show. Getting your car covered online with Santam. It takes 2 minutes to switch, and all you have to do is visit santam.co.za. That's Santam. This is freedom.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Alrighty, a quick catch-up with Zuleika Gulam, who is the iSchool Africa Disability Inclusion and Accessibility Program Manager. And we are talking about reading aloud for change, how we're tackling literacy challenges in South Africa. On February the 5th, it was World Read Aloud Day, and this is a day that's dedicated to promoting literacy as a fundamental human right and emphasizing the power of storytelling in creating strong communities. And of course, we also know that we struggle in South Africa when it comes to literacy development. And so we thought we'd just touch base quickly with Zuleika. How are you doing this afternoon?
Hi, Bridget. Hi, everyone. How are you?
We are great. Thank you. Quickly, just the importance and the impact of days like World Read Aloud Day.
So we all are aware, as you said, we have a significant literacy challenge in South Africa. The International PRR study has found that 81% of grade 4 learners cannot read for meaning, which is very alarming. It's very alarming. And that's why we need to celebrate days like World Read Aloud Day to create this awareness, to create this advocacy, and make changes in our country.
Yeah. And let's talk about perhaps some of the issues that we face, because this is an ongoing conversation for us South Africans, and so we can never talk enough about it until it's been rectified.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bridget. And literacy development is so important. Your literacy development in early childhood sets the foundation for later reading and your literacy levels. And yes, in South Africa, it is a challenge, as you mentioned, and we're all aware of it. But we also have so many opportunities to mitigate these challenges. And we have so many opportunities to utilize what we have, such as resources, teachers, communities, parents, to improve and change the narrative of education and literacy in South Africa.
Yeah. By way of, maybe some of the issues or the barriers surrounding the issue, is language perhaps a consideration here, as well as access to books? We see a lot of community libraries are closed or they're a shadow of what they used to be. And of course, we can't help and we can't ignore, rather, the unequal education resources in our communities.
Absolutely. I agree with you, absolutely. And it is the sad reality that not all our learners in South Africa have equal opportunities to education. But there is so much opportunity for communities, for the private sector, for the government to make a difference in that. So I'm speaking specifically about digital libraries now, because the world is moved into that direction. As you mentioned, libraries look not like they used to anymore. And digital libraries actually offer, well, the iSchool Africa program offers your stories in every language of South Africa. It offers an opportunity for learners to engage with something like a device, a technological device that they are interested in, that they enjoy. And there is this, it seems like it's unattainable, like it's something we can't do, but it is so attainable for South Africans to have access to quality education through technology, through, for example, programs like iSchool Africa.
Yeah. And in fact, through your program, the iSchool Africa Education Trust, you guys have seen a 15% improvement in literacy levels through the literacy iPad program.
Yeah, and it's such an exciting step to talk about, because it's incredible because of our literacy difficulties in South Africa. I'm very passionate about it. So what iSchool Africa does is we take your best technology to your most under-resourced rural and town schools, and we give those learners the opportunity to quality and accessible education. So it sounds different, and it sounds like new and scary and intimidating, but we walk the journey with the teachers and with the schools. So we empower the teachers, we train the teachers. It also allows for sustainability because those teachers then reach so many more learners. We empower those teachers to then empower their learners. We also monitor and evaluate our programs. That's how we can see the results. We can see if technology-based reading and digital libraries is actually benefiting our communities. And that is what we saw. That's where we saw our 15% literacy rate increase. And I think it's a lot about what you can offer to the child and what you can curate to the child to make learning and accessible an opportunity for them. And that's what you're able to do with technology, and previously what you were not able to do. And that ended up making our learners struggle even more, having mental blocks, and that still happens. So, yeah, that's what iSchool Africa does. We curate your learning path. We empower, we advocate, we give opportunity, and all through technology.
Wonderful stuff. Well, listen, Zuleika, no doubt we'll get some more opportunities to unpack even further the work and the programs that you guys are involved in. For today, we'll leave it there. That was Zuleika Gulam, who's with iSchool Africa's, and she is the Disability Inclusion and Accessibility Program Manager. At 2 o'clock, Ondela is bringing you the news at the top of the hour.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. In the top stories, ArcelorMittal closure delayed and SASSA grant beneficiaries urged to upgrade post-bank cards. For SAFM News, I am Ondela Mbana, and a very good day. Still, producer ArcelorMittal says its closure has been delayed by a month amid ongoing interventions with government. A multidisciplinary team of government departments was established last month to find a solution to the looming job losses. This after the company announced plans to shut down its Newcastle and Vereeniging operations. At its financial results presentation in Vanderbiltpark today, it revealed that it has suffered a headline loss of 5.1 billion rand in 2024. ArcelorMittal CEO Cobus Verster says the company has no desire to continue with the business given the challenges.
A Section 189 notice has been issued, and the consultation process regarding the large-scale retrenchment process has commenced and is continuing. The Long's business will only continue with structural changes and financial support that will be underpinned by a long-term sustainability of that business, as the company does not have the appetite to carry any further financial risk associated with the continued operation of that part of the business.
The South African Medical Association Trade Union in Mpumalanga says it expects President Cyril Ramaphosa to outline how a shortage of health workers will be addressed in his State of the Nation address tonight. A few weeks ago, unemployed medical doctors and members of Samatu, among others, demonstrated to raise their frustrations. Mpumalanga Samatu chairperson Dr. Mandla Machabe says the shortage of staff at public health facilities is a serious problem.
And if the president fails to address the issue of unemployment of healthcare professionals, it means that the president does not care about the Tintswalos. And it is not the kind of expectation that we have from a president of the republic. As the first citizen, we are expecting the president to touch on pertinent issues of unemployment, of poverty, and the inequality that we see in the country. So if they don't speak to that, or the SONA does not address that, it would mean that we must reconsider our stance as a union to be in full support of the NHI, because it means that its implementation is not going to be successful.
The private prosecution matter against President Cyril Ramaphosa by former President Jacob Zuma has been removed from the role in the High Court in Johannesburg. The decision follows that of the Constitutional Court earlier this week, where Zuma's application for leave to appeal was refused. The matter stems from 2022, where Zuma launched a private prosecution bid in the High Court. He accused Ramaphosa of being an accessory after the fact over the alleged leak of his health records. Advocate K. Pamela Sihunu, who represented Zuma in court, says both parties have agreed to have the matter removed from the roll. Eastern Cape Transport Embassy Xolile Nqatha has vowed to find solutions to the challenges that have plagued the province's taxi industry. Nqatha and officials from the department met with the National Leadership of Taxi Association Santako in Nqongqe. They discussed various issues affecting taxi industry in the province. Provincial Transport Department spokesperson Unathi Bingose says the two parties have committed to work together to find solutions.
The meeting between Embassy Nqatha and the National Leadership of Santako was another honest attempt at finding lasting solutions to the ongoing violence within the taxi industry in the province and the fast-growing rift between the industry and the public, particularly on issues relating to hitchhiking in the province of the Eastern Cape. The leadership has acknowledged the work that Embassy Nqatha has put in and are pledging to work with him going forward to restore order within the industry.
Post Bank has urged all SASSA grant beneficiaries who have not upgraded to the Post Bank Black Card to urgently do so. Social grant beneficiaries who use the SASSA Gold Cards have until the 28th of this month to switch to the Post Bank Black Card as Gold Cards are being phased out. SASSA says the Black Card is equipped with biometric authentication and enhanced encryption for better protection against fraud, while ensuring faster and more reliable access to grant money. Post Bank CEO Nikki Mbengashe.
So people do need to change their cards, because as with any card, cards do expire at some point, right? The 28th of February is here, and that card, the yellow card, will stop working, and therefore people have to come through, because for the safety of the people and for compliance, people do have to have their new card. I think it's convenient for them. It gives them access to their funds quite easily. They don't have to queue. They can swipe at any retailer. They can swipe at retailer and actually get their cash if they want the cash. So it's actually better for them to actually get the black card.
Recapping the top story, steel producer ArcelorMittal says its closure has been delayed by a month amid ongoing interventions with government. A multidisciplinary team of government departments was established last month to find a solution to the looming job losses. I am Ondelambana for SAFM News headlines at 2:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
Are experts in what they do.
They get to understand what type of business are you doing so that they can insure you properly.
It actually validates why we're with them. If you haven't called Outsurance yet, what are you waiting for?
Switch to Business Outsurance today and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
Reigning champions and log leaders Masanda Wana have a massive task to deliver maximum points to Korkop. But the Buccaneers are eyeing the top spot. They want to paint the capital city in black and white. Miguel Cardoso is up against Jose Rivero. This is the Betway Premiership. Witness Mzanti's beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus Orlando Pirates FC. This Saturday, 8 February at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Our story,
is a South African story.
Anchored in the belief that it takes all of us to build a country that thrives.
To educate our children for a brighter future. To care for our health and well-being.
To nurture our environment to sustain future generations. And to transform and build a stronger nation.
When no one is left behind. Inspiring each other to succeed. Anglo-American.
President Cyril Ramaphosa will on Thursday, 6th of February, deliver the 2025 State of the Nation Address at the Cape Town City Hall. Tune in to the meeting point with Koketso Sachane with a special broadcast from 6 p.m. bringing you blow-by-blow coverage at the 2025 State of the Nation Address.
SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Gilinde, Giabuya Dalema, Begenzelo, Gilinde Tombia, Gilinde, Giabuya Dalema, Shova Malanga Kupeluga, Giboni Stand was some and I go to Nagotana, Stand was some Shova malanga kupelunyanga Giboni Standwa same nagutina gutana Standwa same ngiyagukumbula Bege zela Gilinde ntombiya Gilinde Ngiyabuya daliwa Bege zela Gilinde ntombiya Shova malanga Giboni Standwa same nagutina gutana Standwa same ngiyagukumbula Shova malanga kupelunyanga Giboni Standwa same nagutina gutana Standwa same ngiyagukumbula Umunge kola etuzena Isikhathi ngathi sihambe izinto ngathi azenzeki Uma ungekho la eduze nami isikhathi ngathi sihambe izinto ngathi azenzeki Shiyawo bekezela Gilinde ntombi yami Gilinde Phumulo busuku nemi ngicabanga ngawe njalo nje Ngithemba ukhathele ukuhlala ugijima engqondweni nje Mangiphumulo busuku nemi ngicabanga ngawe njalo nje Oh Thixo busisa leli langa lapha wena ezandleni zami njalo Uwe kuphela owaziyo Some
Bekezela, ngilinde ntombi yami, ngilinde, ngiyabuya dali.
You always know just, how incredible a song is when it has the ability to be cross-generational. And in the team between my producers, my tech producer, as well as our streaming operators, the age ranges from around 26 all the way through to the late 50s, early 60s. And when this song was playing, everybody was singing some rendition of it or another. It was Bekezela coming through with Bekezela, and it won Best Zulu Adult Contemporary Album at the 2011 SAMAs, and it blends traditional African music with some contemporary songwriting. It also won Song of the Year at the Royal Bulawayo Arts Awards. That is how we enter into 2 o'clock in our second hour. We're going to have a quick catch-up with Johanna LeBlanc, who is a national security law and foreign relations expert. And we thought we'd just have this politics for dummies conversation, because there's been so much political chatter and back and forth and so many things happening in the last 2 weeks that, there's a lot of information to decipher and a lot of things to try and understand and get our grips on. And at the same time, obviously, while trying to conscientize ourselves to the various dynamics at play, also trying to curb panic to some degree, because if we don't discern and filter the information, there's also a lot of sort of anxiety and angst that could be ignited, especially amongst South Africans. Good afternoon to you, Joanna. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm excellent. And yourself?
Good morning. Good morning. Yes, I'm told it's 7 a.m. your side. I'm presuming you are in Washington and watching all of the global action.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Only but a pleasure. I mean, let's get into it, sort of like a crash course on all of these diplomatic issues for us, the layman on the street. A lot has happened in just a little over 2 weeks of President Trump's inauguration. And a lot of nations across the world, including South Africans, just normal South Africans, trying to understand what is going on and what is, the Trump second run presidency all about.
Sure. What we saw during the inauguration is a speech that essentially emphasized on sovereignty, economic nationalism, and a commitment to restoring what Mr. Trump perceives to be America's global standing. Compared to his past inaugurations, which focused on unity and bipartisanship, this previous address reinforces campaign themes of border security, economic self-reliance, and skepticism toward multilateralism. As you see, he recently announced that the United States will be withdrawing from the WHO. And then also we got to look at the historical precedent for such rhetoric that can be seen in previous presidents that have taken office during moments of perceived national crisis. As you know, the inflation during Biden's administration was rather high. Unemployment was also high in this country. So you look at former presidents like Ronald Reagan in 1981 when he took office, or even before Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1933, both of whom framed their administration as a corrective force, similar to what Mr. Trump did during his presidential speech.
So, one understands obviously the need for sovereignty. One understands the need for country first politics, right? But there almost seems to be a sense of abrasiveness in how President Trump is going about his first couple of weeks in office. Does this tell us anything at all about how he intends, to sort of lead the U.S. and also navigate international relations between the U.S. and its partner nations around the world?
Sure. I think that President Trump's stance on international institutions remains consistent with his previous term, with an emphasis on bilateralism over multilateralism, right? Engagement. And again, as I said, the potential withdrawing from the World Health Organization, and also his approach towards NATO being more of a transactional approach. And I think those types of decisions definitely alter global security dynamics, right? And then also, too, you look at the tariffs that was initially imposed on Canada, China, as well as Mexico, three of the United States' strongest trading partners, right? Even though there's been a pause on the tariffs that's been imposed on Canada and Mexico, because there was some kind of negotiation that transpired. But we see China recently filed a complaint against the United States at the World Trade Organization. So I think these types of dynamics kind of give us a glance of how Mr. Trump is going to govern internationally, but it also creates some level of uncertainty when it comes to global cooperation. And we saw how Mr. Trump also announced recently in regards to South Africa that the administration will not attend G20, which is rather unfortunate. I mean, this is an organization that was created by the United States government, and this is because of Mr. Trump does not support the country's stance on land policy, which is rather unfortunate, again, because I think land issues in South Africa is one that is a domestic matter and doesn't really quite concern the United States to a certain extent. So, and I think that it's important for Mr. Trump and some of his advisors to really understand the history of South Africa, the struggles of Black South Africans in South Africa, and the atrocities that occurred during the apartheid. So to gain a better understanding as to where South Africa is today, but also to we saw some of the tweets that were put out were filled with lies about certain groups being treated a certain type of way in South Africa. So those types of decisions are rather concerning, and again, it just gives us a glimpse of how Mr. Trump is going to engage with his international partners.
Yeah. I want to take a quick pause here. It's just gone 20 past 2 o'clock, and then we'll come back and continue our conversation with Johanna LeBlanc. Our WhatsApp lines are open on 061-410-4107. And, of course, you can always give us a shout as well on 086-000-2032.
Action is getting tougher in the second half of the league. The Folks want to ease off pressure with a win, but the Eagles aim to fly with 3 points to remain in the top 5.
This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be.
Catch Borussia Mönchengladbach FC versus Eintracht Frankfurt FC on Saturday, 8 February at 7:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on TTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Santam can cover your car in just 2 minutes. That's faster than scrolling through your streaming app, choosing a show, then deciding against it to rewatch another show because you didn't want to start without your partner and sit through the awkward "I started without you" chat. Get your car covered in just 2 minutes so you can live in the moment, not in the worry. Visit santam.co.za. Santam. This is freedom. Santam is an authorized FSP, a licensed non-life insurer and controlling company for its group companies.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
We are in conversation with Johanna LeBlanc, who's a national security law and foreign relations expert, and we're just having a conversations which is really about geopolitics for us dummies, the layman on the streets, just trying to get a clear understanding of everything that's been unfolding. And at the center of it all, obviously, is the U.S. government under the leadership of the newly inaugurated President Trump. And Joanna, you spoke about, the sense of unpredictability about how President Trump's administration is choosing to operate. This is surely not good for global business, right? This puts global economies at a sort of a predicament for as those who work in various sectors and keep their eyes on global economies. Stability and predictability are huge themes around these worlds.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in particular for investors, one of the main things that investors look to when deciding where to invest their monies and their dollars is, whether or not there is stability in that respective country. And if it is seen as though Mr. Trump at any given moment, depending on his posture or his position towards a country's domestic or foreign policy, it may impact trade relations with the United States. Countries may really reconsider, and I don't think that serves in the best interest of the United States government, because as you know, I think as the United States takes these different approaches that are not perceived well with the rest of the world, nor the economic sector, I think it creates a power vacuum for countries like China and Russia to continue to expand their footprints across the African continent and certainly across the Western Hemisphere. And look, in the context of Africa, I think that Africa's role in U.S. foreign policy will be largely depend on how the administration approaches China's growing influence on the continent, right? We saw during Trump's first term, Africa was often viewed through a security lens, with counterterrorism efforts in the Sahel and in the Horn of Africa, driving large-scale military engagement. But however, I think it's important that trade and investment initiatives such as Prosper Africa, is a bit more emphasized on, as well as the U.S. Development Finance Corporation, which provides access to capital for investors who are looking to secure debt financing in emerging markets. Because the reality is that China has been the continent's number one trade partner for the past decade or so, and the United States is quite behind. And so the U.S. has a great deal of catching up to do, and there are vast opportunities, for the United States as well as the continent. But I think there needs to be a greater emphasis on trade and investments and so on. When we look at AGOA, for example, which is up to expire in September of 2025, South Africa is the country that benefits from it the most, and that is the country that provides the most economic benefits to the United States. So, and unfortunately, I foresee that the relationship between South Africa and the United States is going to be quite challenging, and there's a possibility that South Africa may even be removed from AGOA as a condition for South Africa to take certain positions and certain steps. Now, whether South Africa decides to take those steps that will be recommended by the U.S. administration, that's a different conversation. But nonetheless, that relationship is going to be very rocky, which will impact the relationship the U.S. will have with other countries on the continent. Yeah. As you know, South Africa is a superpower on the African continent.
And just as we, in our last few moments, as you mentioned, AGOA, Minister Ronald Lamola actually went as far as clarifying in some recent media engagements over yesterday and this morning that, well, as far as he knows and understands, AGOA hasn't been a conversation right now in this tension and this back and forth exchange between the two administrations. But obviously the question domestically, a lot of people have settled AGOA onto everything that's happening with that funding that's been frozen via PEPFAR, and people going, well, AGOA is ultimately at risk because it will be used as a leveraging tool.
Absolutely. You are absolutely correct. We know Mr. Trump, he's a businessman, and he runs the United States as a private corporation. In some regard, it's good, and in some regard, not so much, because as you know, there are diplomatic norms. There are diplomatic ways of engaging with countries around the world. So it's a different type of leadership that I think many people in the global South and are not quite familiar with, or not. So it's going to create a lot of challenges. But I do foresee that AGOA is going to be on the table as a negotiation tool, and sometimes some of these negotiations work for the benefit of the United States and so on. But what I can tell you is that these types of negotiations that Mr. Trump engages in are not inconsistent with what previous administrations have done, Democrats or Republicans. The only difference is that Mr. Trump tends to do this in the open via Twitter for the whole world to see, whereas usually these types of negotiations are done behind closed doors through diplomatic channels. But Mr. Trump does not. He's not a traditional president. He's a businessman. Again, he's governing the country as a corporation.
Yeah, we fast run out of time, Joanna, but I want to quickly sneak in our last 45 seconds. Does all of this chaos and pandemonium also present an opportunity, though, for countries like South Africa and the rest of the continent?
Absolutely. For Africa and the broader international community, I think that there will be challenges, but also opportunities. But I think the next few months will provide us a much greater clarity on whether the U.S. will maintain a confrontational stance on global issues, or whether strategic alliances, particularly in regions like Africa, will evolve to reflect shifting geopolitical realities.
Yeah, appreciate the time, and of course acknowledging that you have to have an early start to be in conversation with us. That was Joanna LeBlanc, who's a national security law and foreign relations expert. It's just gone 2:30. It's time for Ondela and the headline news.
Thank you, Bridget. In the news headlines, steel producer ArcelorMittal says its closure has been delayed by a month amid ongoing interventions with government. A multidisciplinary team of government departments have established last month to find a solution to the looming job losses. The organization Undoing Tax Abuse is calling on President Cyril Ramaphosa to outline decisive plans on combating crime when he delivers the State of the Nation address this evening. And an Israeli delegation is expected to fly to Qatar this weekend to resume talks on the Gaza ceasefire and hostage release agreement. Israeli officials have said the delegation won't be discussing the second stage of the deal planned, but will focus on the ongoing implementation of the first stage. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM. This program is brought to you by SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
Asibambisana Zinina Zini Ayikomanini Haraswarani Say and say Side by side.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Side by Side, brought to you by the National Department of Health, Ilifa Labantwana, and the SABC Education. Today we're talking about tuberculosis, TB, and how it affects children and families. We've just heard from our drama episode yesterday how Lupumzo shared their concerns regarding TB and its impact on Qola and his daughter. Joining us to talk about TB, your child, and your family is Dr. Hlope from Herigwala Hospital. Dr. Hlope, thank you so much for joining us today. What is the difference between TB infection and TB disease?
Thank you so much for having me. People can have TB infection, but they will not necessarily become sick with the TB disease. People with TB infection have the TB bacteria in their bodies, but their immune system is strong enough to contain the bacteria and stop it from spreading. This means the bacteria can remain inactive for many years. People with TB infection have no symptoms of TB disease and they don't feel sick and they are not contagious. There is a risk the TB bacteria will become active at a later stage and cause a TB disease, especially in those with weakened immune system. In TB disease, the body is no longer strong enough to keep the bacteria under control. Children with TB infection have a higher chance of developing active TB disease because their immune system is not as developed as an adult's immune system. People with TB disease in the lungs or throats are capable of infecting others by coughing droplets of the bacteria into the air. However, children with TB disease are not usually contagious.
What are the signs and symptoms of tuberculosis in children that I should look out for?
Tuberculosis in children can be challenging to identify because the symptoms are often nonspecific and they can resemble other common childhood illnesses. However, there are some key symptoms and signs that we can find. A persistent cough that is lasting for more than 3 weeks that does not respond to typical treatment. A prolonged fever that is often accompanied by night sweats, unexplained weight loss or failure to thrive, a fatigue, which is a tiredness and a lack of energy, swollen glands, especially in the neck, breathing difficulties where there is shortness of breathing, and if a child exhibits the symptoms, it's important to seek medical attention promptly for proper evaluation and diagnosis.
Dr. Hlophe, what steps can families take to stop the spread of TB and keep their children safe?
Preventing the spread of TB and protecting children involves several key steps. The early identification and treatment, which ensures that everyone with symptoms of TB is promptly diagnosed and treated, and this helps to reduce the spread of disease within the household and the community. A BCG vaccine, which is given to a child when they are born in many countries to protect against severe forms of TB in children. Ensuring good ventilation in a living space to reduce the concentration of TB bacteria in the air. Encouraging good hygiene practice, such as covering the mouth when coughing or sneezing and regular hand washing. Providing nutrition diet to boost the immune system and the overall health. Limiting close contact with individuals known to have active TB until they are no longer infectious. By following these measures, family can help prevent the spread of TB and protect their children from the disease.
And if you think your child might have tuberculosis, when should you take them to see a doctor?
If you suspect that your child may have TB, or may have been in contact with someone affected by TB, you can see your GP or the clinic. The doctor will arrange for some tests to see if your child has been infected. There's a mental test, which is a skin test that is done to see whether a child has been exposed to the TB bacteria. There's a small amount of injection into the skin on the forearm, and a doctor looks at the skin test 2 to 3 days later to see if there has been a reaction. There's a quantiferon gold test, which is a blood test that measures how a person's immune system reacts to a bacteria that causes TB. Both the skin and blood tests can indicate that the child has been infected with TB. However, they do not determine if the child has active TB disease. Further testing is then needed to find out if the TB is active, including a thorough examination by a doctor, a chest X-ray, and a sputum sample.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Hlophe. In closing, what are the available treatments for tuberculosis?
Both TB infection and TB disease are treated with antibiotics. Antibiotics used to treat TB, they include isoniazid, rifampicin, pyrazinamide, and ethambutol. If your child has a TB disease, they have to be treated with 4 types of antibiotics, which has to be taken together for 2 months, and then 2 antibiotics for a further 4 months. TB disease outside of the lungs may need longer courses of antibiotics. It is very important that all antibiotics are taken until advised by your doctor. If you stop taking antibiotics before your doctor tells you to, this can make the TB bacteria resistant to antibiotics and very difficult to treat. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for listening to Side by Side, the show that supports you to give your child the best possible start in life. Brought to you by the National Department of Health, Ilifa Labantwana, and the SABC Education. Join the conversation with other caregivers on our Facebook page at Side by Side SA and look out for more great content. Join us again same time next week when we'll be talking about nutrition for children aged 6 to 12 months.
Side by Side.
This program was brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
Ever since Uspillion won 5,000 rand, 5 tower on Wheel of Fortune, he only wears white push-in sandals, star white, Baba, and he owns 10 identical pairs. And before he did not even know the Queen's language. Now, Kalabo, wow. Chance, let's watch Wheel of Fortune weekdays, Monday to Friday at 7:30 on S3 and see how one spin changed Billion's life and how it can change ours as well in just one day.
Don't miss out. Make every day a payday with the guaranteed 1 million rand daily lotto jackpot that's waiting to be won. From just 3 rand, play daily lotto now for your chance at the guaranteed 1 million rand jackpot. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is a proud operator of the National Lottery.
President Cyril Ramaphosa will on Thursday, 6th of February, deliver the 2025 State of the Nation Address at the Cape Town City Hall. Tune in to the meeting point with Koketso Sachane with a special broadcast from 6 p.m., bringing you blow-by-blow coverage at the 2025 State of the Nation Address.
SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
All right, we are having a conversation now around retirement, really. Do you think that you'll be able to retire at 65? Well, apparently 80 is South Africa's real retirement age. My goodness. And most folks think that they'll retire at 65. However, the reality of it all is that it's quite different. And I think it's got a lot to do with, obviously, the economic and social dynamics that we deal with in the country. But let me not be the person who expands on this. My guest, Kanyisa Mkize, joins us now, and we are talking around this conversation. Chief. Oh, did the guest change? Oh. The guest changed in real time. Koketso Mahlalela joins me now, head member of LED Outcomes at Santam Corporate. How are you doing, Koketso?
Good afternoon to you and to the listeners.
Thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. So, according to your internal member data, South Africa's true retirement age, where the age at which most citizens can afford to retire comfortably, is closer to 60 than it is to 65.
You mean closer to 80
I
than
mean,
it is to
80,
65?
yes.
Yes, that is the case, Bridget. Sorry, I thought you... Are you
I'm here, Koketso.
And okay, go for it, Bridget.
No, I was saying, so you say it's closer to 80 than it is to 65. What is informing this?
Sure. So, historically, 65 is considered the standard retirement age in South Africa. But now, when we look at this shift, when we're saying it's closer to 15 years, essentially we're talking about the additional years that South Africans need to put the efforts towards them saving towards their retirement in order for them to achieve financial security. So I suppose the departure from that traditional benchmark of 65 really just underscores the widening gap between what we have from an aspirational perspective and also the financial realities that we're faced with as South Africans.
Mm. So if we're saying that realistically, we need this additional almost 25 years or so to put in the effort, or rather 15 years or so to put in the effort as South Africans. Wait, my maths. Yeah, 25 years in fact.
Years.
Because 16...
Yes. It is 15, you're right. The gap looking from 65 to 80, 100%.
Yeah. So if we need this 15 years to sort of bridge this gap, but we also know that from a legislative perspective, we do have to retire at 65. Now, what must happen? This ultimately says that conversation about South Africans not being ready for retirement is still very much a priority conversation.
100%, Bridget, 100%. I think what it really highlights is, if we look at the duration that we have as working individuals, right? We need to ensure that we are saving more than what we are seeing in this day and age. So in terms of what really has to happen, I think there are different parties that play a role in us achieving that goal, right? I think from an individual perspective, it's reassessing, looking at the contribution rates that we're making towards our retirement savings, and essentially increasing it from what we're seeing as the average that's sitting now at about 10% on a net basis. So looking at that, it's Bridget, it's really looking at how do we, as in the number of years that we have, which is restricted, how do we increase the contribution rates, and at the same time, what additional savings and investments can we make towards our retirement savings in order for us to reach that goal? And I mentioned that, there are different parties at play that could assist, right, in aiding us to cover that gap, especially in the duration that we have. I think when we look at our data, it even further suggests that a lot of individuals even enter the workforce a lot later than what we would find in other economies. I mean, we're actually seeing more individuals on average joining the workforce at around the age of 30. So it even restricts the amount of time that you have in saving towards your retirement. You restrict it to about 35 years. So from an individual perspective, in addition to you increasing your contribution rates, I think there's also a role that companies can also play in helping to cover that gap. And there's a role that, and there, I suppose, as a business sector, their role would be around assisting in ways to allow for an increased contribution rate. So for example, some of the ways could be looking at automatically increasing the contribution rates with salary escalations. So ensuring that you achieve higher savings without necessarily reducing that take-home pay. I think another key feature that could be made use of would be additional voluntary contributions, for example, as that would also allow, and this would be something that we could make use of maybe from the additional income that working individuals receive, where they then can take, for example, what they would have gotten from a bonus payout and other one-off incentives and use that and direct it towards the retirement savings. And maybe one or another two things I could mention that the business sector could also assist in helping to cover for this gap would be allowing for an enhanced employer matching program. So employers playing a role in offering higher contribution or matching contribution rates, encouraging employees to also save more towards their retirement. And of course, the key aspect of it all is continuing to leverage the financial education and tools that are available to employees, to partnering with employees as a business sector to ensure that they have access to financial advice, digital planning tools, and really ensuring that from an educational perspective, as individuals, they are informed in the decisions that they are making in terms so that they can optimize their ultimate retirement planning.
Now, a lot of folks get the interventions that you speak of in order to assist sort of cover this gap. A lot of people will speak of, well, you're calling for us to make bigger financial contributions and bigger financial sacrifices. But in the context of capitalism and the landscape that we live in, it might not be the easiest of asks for, whether corporates or individuals alike as well.
That is true, Bridget, and that is the challenge that we face, right, as a society, and I think it really then brings to the fact that what are the alternatives that we also could then start to think around, right? When we think about how do we then alleviate some of the pressures that are put on, on the pockets, right? And the aspect that I keep, or that I think is quite central to this, right, is around that educational feature. And the reason I mention that, if you think about it from a budgeting perspective, for example, those are some of the tools that already start to make you think around how do I manage the expenses or the outgo that comes out of my pocket versus the incomes, that I'm able to access. So those type of, it's almost like an adjustment that would need to be made in order to be able to deal with these pressures that you mentioned that we're faced with as South Africans.
Yeah. The other thing that you mentioned that I think we never consider in this conversation is the impact of, our society's late entry into the workforce. And there's really no sort of contingency planning even coming out from government around this. And this is a predicament that we're going to face in the very near future, that we're having adults entering the workforce later and ultimately retiring at 65 as per, the legislation, the laws of the land, but literally just being in the workforce for 30 years, 25 years before that time is up. That's not sufficient time. So it speaks to there needs to be some kind of proactive planning around this inevitable circumstance.
I agree. And I think maybe then, one of the things then that would probably need to be considered there then is looking at the old age pensions means test, right? Because reviewing that at least what the state possibly could do there is maybe on review, looking at, I suppose, the challenge that you're highlighting now, where you've got individuals who have retirement funds, preserve them, but they are disqualified from the additional state support. And at the same time, you also find that, for those, in order for us to try to ensure a comfortable and secure retirement, what is then provided from a state perspective, it's still not enough. So there's that gray area that really then starts to emerge, right? And I think that state assistance is really something that is required in this instance. And even just thinking about two-pot and what's being tried to be achieved there, it's the messaging that is really required from a preservation perspective to encourage South Africans to continue to with their retirement savings and not tap into that, unless, of course, it's in the case of emergencies, which we know is something that is unavoidable as well.
What kind of challenges is this? I mean, outside of obviously the tapping into assistance, but what kind of challenges is this predicted sort of new retirement age presenting for employers and for companies?
You mean in terms of the older retirement age?
In terms, the older retirement age, in terms of just managing maybe, the aging workforce and also at the same time balancing this transformation objectives. Because clearly there must be some hurdles there that they're also going to need to jump.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. And I think, so some of the challenges, I mean, as you highlight, for example, it's really looking at, of course, you've got your older individuals, as you mentioned, and looking at how do we then start to create opportunities for younger employees in the country as they enter the workforce, and at the same time having the older individuals, of course, guide the younger employees as well as they transition into the workforce. So that challenge, I suppose, it's really just balancing how do you then, looking at the two age groups and the movement, from the firm perspective, how do we then ensure that, the two groups work together and cohesively? So I think, it's really a matter of finding a way to transition between the age groups as well over time, where, of course, you allow that to the older generations start to educate the younger generations as well as they move up into the workflows and into the workforce rather. And that can also start to deal with some of the challenges that are faced there in balancing the discrepancies in the different age groups that emerge.
We saw, obviously, in 2023, I think at the beginning of 2023, those widespread protests that ignited in France, right? And lasted for quite a while with, I think, just over like 1 million citizens taking to the streets protesting the sort of proposal, the reform bill around pensions and the retirement age in France being...
Bridget?
Can you hear me?
Bridget?
Koketso? Are we having a connection problem with Koketso at the moment? I think so. Koketso? Okay, we seem to be having a connection problem. Let's take a quick pause because I want to find out from her if maybe whether or not we should also be considering a similar approach to France where they increased their retirement age from 62 to 64. And of course, citizens were not having it, but it was deemed a necessary step by the government for them to take. And I wonder if maybe that should be a consideration for us in South Africa. Let's take a quick pause.
Santam can cover your car in just 2 minutes. That's faster than you microwaving your leftovers. Realizing they're still cold? Giving them a second chance. Realizing they're still cold? And eating them anyway. Because you've already committed to it. Get your car covered in just 2 minutes so you can live in the moment, not in the worry. Visit santam.co.za. Santam, this is freedom. Santam is an authorized FSP, a licensed non-life insurer and controlling company for its group companies.
Don't miss out. Make every day a payday with the guaranteed 1 million rand daily lotto jackpot that's waiting to be won. From just 3 rand, play daily lotto now for your chance at the guaranteed 1 million rand jackpot. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old to play responsibly. E2 is a proud operator of the National Lottery.
Do great solutions start with a good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
All right, Koketso Mahlalela is with us, head member of the LED outcomes at Sanlam Corporate, rather. And I was just asking you, Koketso, just as we wind down the conversation, we saw obviously in 2023 in France those widespread protests, right? Citizens in the millions taking to the streets, protesting the bill to reform and increase the retirement age in France from 62 to 64. Necessary intervention that the government put forward. Is this something that perhaps we should be considering in South Africa? And also just given, when we observe in sort of our own lived experiences, at 64, South Africans are still at 64, 65, South Africans are still participating. They're still agile. They're still eager to be in the workforce. And they still got another decade or so in them left to be out there and be productive.
Yes, yeah. So, Bridget, to answer you, I do think it's something worth considering. And I mentioned this looking at the fact that, and I'm going to assume here that you mean, considering if we could potentially increase, right, the retirement age. So the advantage of that is it does then introduce additional years to then contribute towards retirement savings. So it increases, I think, what I mentioned earlier around South Africans generally having around 35 years for them to contribute towards what they would then have once they retire. So I think it's definitely something that could work. We are also if you look over time, the life expectancy of South Africans has also increased over time. So meaning what would be needed in your retirement years would even be, would be a higher amount than what it would have been before. So yes, I think that's definitely something that could be considered as one of the solutions to this.
Yeah, we have to wrap it there for this afternoon, but we appreciate the time. That was Koketso Mahlalela joining us. And of course, we've reached the end of our part of the afternoon. Ashraf is taking over 3 until 6 on the National Pulse. No doubt a lot on the agenda, with a sharp focus on that SONA that is coming up at 8 o'clock this evening. And our very own Koketso is going to be broadcasting live from Cape Town, so you don't want to miss that. The meeting point between 8 and 10 o'clock, unpacking all of the hot issues that a lot of folks and stakeholders alike are going to be keenly watching and listening to hear whether or not the president touches on. And there's a whole array of social and economic as well as political issues that folks are hoping that shall be addressed through the State of the Nation address today. We are going to play out with maybe one or two of your voice notes from earlier on. Thank you so much for being in conversation with us. We'll be back with you tomorrow as we wrap up the week.
Remember Bridget, what Trump decision he has taken is so foolish, you know. Trump vents his anger on South Africa, as if South Africa is the only country that rallied behind Israel. You know, no man is an island. All these decisions he has taken will negatively impact global business. I'm telling you the stark truth. You know, he is under the influence of anger, bitterness. He's so bitter. But South Africa cannot be Trump's lapdog. He can survive with or without his foreign aid. Thousand from Brand Fisher. Good afternoon, lovely sister.
Good afternoon, Bridget. This is Sakilin Tsugun from Kamhlabialingan. You know, Bridget, I totally agree with your guest that if the price of liquor were to be increased, there would be a reduction in alcohol abuse in the country. Thank you.
President Cyril Ramaphosa will on Thursday, 6th of February, deliver the 2025 State of the Nation Address at the Cape Town City Hall. Tune in to the meeting point with Koketso Sachane with a special broadcast from 6 p.m., bringing you blow-by-blow coverage at the 2025 State of the Nation Address.
SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Top stories at 3. ArcelorMittal closure delayed and talks on Gaza ceasefire expected to resume this weekend. For SAFM News, I am Ondalambana and a very good afternoon. Steel producer ArcelorMittal says it has no desire to continue with operations, even if its closure has been postponed by a month. The company earlier announced that it has delayed the closure of its long steel business amid ongoing interventions with government to find a solution to looming job losses. It had announced plans to shut down its Newcastle and Vereeniging operations. At its financial results presentation,